Good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday, the 24th of February, 8 o'clock here in Melbourne. Welcome to Conversations with Thought Leaders. My name's David Webley, and Conversations with Thought Leaders is a platform we've created to connect community with inspirational people across the world. I'm also the founder and managing director of Granite Consulting, and we partner with businesses to find brilliant talent and help people make the right career choices. Welcome to Series 3. Our topic for the series is with change comes growth. And we're really excited with the guests we have lined up. I'm joined today by Renata Sguario. Good morning, Renata.
Good morning, David.
And Renata is the founder and CEO of MaxMe, which is a business focused on uplifting human skills. Obviously, human skills have always been critical, never more so than today. But a bit about Renata. So prior to MaxMe, Renata spent a couple of decades leading digital and technology transformations within some of Australia's leading blue chip organisations. And she's passionate about equipping people with critical human skills and helping them thrive. Right, we'll get into it. So, Renata, for those that don't know you, could you share a bit around your backstory, please?
Sure, of course, Dave, thanks. And I just want to comment that a lot of the themes coming out of those books and those podcasts are very human skill thematic. So I look forward to debriefing that, actually. I found that really interesting. So a bit about me. I'll start by introducing the concept that I was introduced to a little while ago, actually probably 10 years ago, by a wonderful woman when I worked at NAB. Her name was Lorraine Riddick, and she introduced me to this concept of who-ness and whatness. And I've done a bit of research on that recently, and it's a thing. So I'll start by talking about my who-ness. Who am I? So I'm the child of Ukrainian immigrants. I was actually born in the Ukraine myself, and I very much feel very, for my parents, basically. I feel very grateful for the choices that they made to bring me to Australia and then to sort of open up a lot of options for me and my career. I'm the mother of 2 teenage girls. We've survived a child in VCE in 2020. We survived a child who was in year 9 and had to basically do things for herself for about a year in 2020. So 2 teenage girls. I sort of live downtown Melbourne, have a big Ukrainian family. So I very much spend a lot of my time feeling very, very busy these days. And so in terms of my whatness, what do I do? I guess, David, I would, probably summarize and say that I've spent the majority of my life in a servant leadership type of mindset. I have pretty much always found myself in leadership roles, and that's both when I was at school, in uni and work. I guess gravitate to those things. And the reason for that is because I'm deeply engaged in helping others, and it's probably one of the reasons why I find myself where I am today. I found myself in the sorts of roles that I have for almost 3 decades. So I'm going to have to one-up you on that one, Dave. More than a couple, definitely 3 decades in corporate, leading big teams and helping others realise their potential.
Yeah, fantastic. So it just made me think, and it was something I was listening to the other day. So, the school of thought that before you help others, you need to be in tune with yourself and help yourself. And certainly, I'm interested in yoga and sort of that coming from within is something that you really need to work on. So did you have to go through a process of getting to know yourself and understanding who you were before you could then become in that servant leadership capacity?
Without a doubt, David. And, I always talk, when I talk about human skills, and I know we're going to sort of talk about it a bit more later on, the very first foundational step of any human skill development is self-awareness and working on who you are. You can't realise your potential and be the best version of yourself without doing that. Now, to be honest with you, as I mentioned, I'm the child of Ukrainian parents. I have a mother who was a very, very strong role model for me. She had a career, she raised her children. And we my sisters and I could never escape this self-development path that she put us on. There was never this acceptance of anything other than you've got to be a good human being. You've got to know what your value is in life. You've got to step into your confidence. And, my mum, for those that have met her, and there might be someone on this podcast that have met my mum, at the end of the day, she was a sort of no frills kind of lady. And she was always very, very blunt to us about, who we needed to be as individuals and as people, and then what we gave out into the world to be caring, giving, kind people. That was the way that we were brought up. And so I've always kind of had to be that way. It was never an option. But as a result, I'm very grateful, because I do believe that the way that I present when I serve others, which is a very, very strong value for me, is that I step into things like kindness, gratitude, empathy, care, all of the things that I think are really, really important in leadership and very important to being a very good servant leader.
Yeah, and I think that's really, we're starting to touch into the things that, being a product of your background and your environment and your upbringing. And I've been really enjoying the Barack Obama, Bruce Springsteen podcast called Renegades. And there's a lot of stuff in there around, we're all a product of the own environment that we, experience as a child, really.
Yeah, and look, there's so much research around this concept, of nature versus nurture. And I will say it definitely plays out, even in my family. I have two sisters and we've all been brought up by the same parents, but we are quite different in the way that we serve others. And so therefore it must be, right? We have all had the same nurture, but we have nuances in our nature and the things that I guess we hold true in our values. What's really important, though, is that we've been given a passageway to discover what those are. And we've been deeply supported and coached by our mother and our father to some extent, but definitely our mother, around realization of those things. And very early in life, I realized how important it is to have that coaching behind you so that you can discover who you truly are and then step in and be the best version of yourself. It's a really, really important thing to have.
Yeah, fantastic. So the move from corporate life, and, a lot of our audience today will be, a mixture of people in, corporate life and self-employed. But the move from corporate to business owner is a significant shift. And what sort of motivated this?
Well, I sort of describe this as the perfect storm of things that happened to me, David. I have, as I said to you, spent almost 30 years in working for some of the largest organisations, both here and overseas. And one of the things that started to, as I moved from a bit more of my discovering who I am, and by the way, I am very much on a lifelong, I'm kind of a work in progress, as I describe it, and that's part of the beauty, the openness to who you can continue to become. But I guess as you get closer to the sort of middle age, you become a little bit more sure of who you kind of are in the core, and then you start to work on the edges. And as I started to do that and really wanting to spread my wings around the things that I know work for people, work for their well-being, work for their career success, work for them being the best version of themselves, I started to find myself time and time again butting into this kind of wall, as I call it, where, I would come in, I would be fresh, I'd be excited, I'd get a group of people to lead, we'd start on this journey, we'd make great progress, and then something would happen and it would come to an abrupt end, whether it would be the lack of support from my leaders or another restructure or something that sort of presented, where I realised that actually to make the sort of difference that I want to make requires me to step out of, a sort of one company type of environment and start to really spread my wings and try and make a big difference for a larger group of people. And in particular, the youth, the future, the workforce of the future, as I call it, because to be honest with you, there is a significant gap entering in the workforce, and we've done quite a bit of market research, speaking to students, speaking to early career, and speaking to executives or people, in corporates. And all agree the problem statement, which is there's a significant and actually ever-growing gap around the sort of employability skills or the human skills that you need to be successful and what's presenting or what's available or what the reality is in our workplaces. And we've seen this play out, particularly through and post-COVID, is this movement around a different type of leadership, a different sort of well-being needs of the humans in an organisation. And, not that I'm Nostradamus or anything, but this is kind of the way I've always been. And I could see that ever-growing gap in particular the new to work people that I led. I did a lot of graduate recruitment. I led graduates every single round in pretty much 3 organizations. So I was really lucky. I was open to having this talent working with me. But the gap in human skills was sort of ever growing. And I thought, you know what, if there's going to be ever a time, it's now. I need to step out and do something, probably fueled by the fact that I've got an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old. They are very much moving into that part of their lives which they're thinking about their employability. And because I am that servant leader type of person, I just felt compelled. Like, it was sort of the pull. I couldn't sort of ignore it any longer. So I had to do it.
Yeah. It's quite ironic, really, that in the last year or so, we've not seen each other nearly as much, yet human skills have become more important than they've ever been before. So I guess it's worth maybe speaking a bit around human skills in the virtual world versus in, a physical world. Maybe you can share a bit on that.
What I think happens, David, and I think the reason why it's become so much more prevalent in our minds and then in our everyday is because the gap has become more obvious. When we were in the workplaces together, humans have an innate need to belong. We know this, the diversity and inclusion movement. Humans have far better well-being when they belong to a group, a tribe, whatever you want to call it. And so when we're physically together, the sense of belonging is much stronger. Like we're there, we're sitting with people, we eyeball each other. And so the actual gap in human skills wasn't as obvious because we had our people, we had our tribe. If there were gaps in leadership in the people that led us and in their kind of human skills, it wasn't as obvious. Like, it was there and it was obvious, but we made do. Now that we're no longer in those groups and we have to connect virtually, which is actually it's not natural to humans. Humans, if you look at sort of through the ages, we need to physically be with one another. We need to be with our people. That gap is widening. And what we're looking for, because we seek for some sort of making sense of things. We're looking for being able to step in and being more supported, having people around us that we can feel like we belong with. But the virtual world presents real difficulty. And so what I am hopefully being able to step in and help with is for those that feel that they need to develop their human skills more, and all of us should really be on that journey, that lifelong learning, is the ability to kind of strengthen and fortify ourselves so that the gap becomes less of a burden on us, because our own self-actualization and our own ability to step in and do and be the best version of ourselves starts to then help close that ever-growing gap, particularly as we don't get to spend time with one another.
Do you think if I look at the younger generation, if I look at my daughters, they don't seem to differentiate so much between a FaceTime with their friends and a physical, play date, so to speak. Whereas myself, where I've lived in the other world, pre-iPads and what have you, it's a bigger adjustment. So do you think that youngsters coming through are just going to be, more accepting of virtual versus physical?
I actually think it's a real paradox because, to be honest with you, David, I think it's an and, even for the younger generation. The reality is, and as I said to you, I've got a 15-year-old and an 18-year-old, and they're very much in that Gen Z generation of, it's text everything. No one ever makes a phone call anymore. However, I did see that my children definitely missed the physical contact of their friends.
Yeah.
That kind of social ability to express yourself, to belong, and really just that sort of ability to step in and play a game or bounce the ball around the basketball court. My younger daughter is quite physical and she loves sport. That group dynamic that plays out when you play in a group sport, she missed all of that. So even though she had her Instagram, her Snapchats, and all of the things that she does, I think she realized just how empty it is when you just have that. I think as our kids are growing up, when they have a balance between those things, that's what actually helps them to be fully fulfilled. Certainly for my daughters, and I can't speak for other people's kids, but for my daughters, even with my older daughter who's a bit more introverted and into herself, likes her own space, She missed the contact with her friends and that sense of belonging. For adults, for the older people like us, I definitely agree with you, because we didn't grow up with social media. For Gen Zs, they've known nothing else. They've known nothing else other than the internet. We definitely remember a time before that. And the kind of things that we used to be exposed to before that. And I find myself craving and deeply missing, that sort of human interaction, being together, collaboration, being able to communicate and not have to sort of lean into a camera and judge, cues that were a lot more obvious in a person-to-person type of situation. So we do have to retrain ourselves, definitely.
Yeah, and I think that human energy, that interaction, I remember when we started to come together in small groups again as a business and went out for a bite to eat at lunch, how great it was to be able to sit around a table sharing something to eat, and even better that you didn't have to do the dishes for the first time in 9 months.
Or cook. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm not much of a cook on the best of days, David, but yeah, definitely the COVID. I became very good at cooking through COVID, which is an unexpected new skill for me. But yes, look, I think, and I had a meeting with someone as we came out of lockdown, and in Victoria, we know we had one of the probably the strictest lockdowns in the world. As we were coming out and talking to one another, we both commented on how awkward it felt. We both come from situations where we've got our own businesses, we do a lot of public speaking, but we both said it felt quite awkward. So there's this concept of needing, this is why lifelong learning is so important, the constant need to shift, to change, to relearn, to unlearn, all of those things are really, really critical to our well-being and survival, actually.
Yeah. And have you noticed there's obviously a lot of people who have got work during the pandemic, and so they're in a situation where they've got work colleagues that they've never met. So have you noticed a difference between, the human interactions between groups of people who are working but they've never met each other, versus I often find that if people have met, then they've built up some sort of trust equity, I suppose I call it, and then it's easier to move to a remote environment?
Oh, definitely. And being able to collaborate online is probably one of the most challenging things that everyone I'm speaking to is finding. It's just harder to get stuff done. And it's not just the physical location. I think it's exactly what you described, David. When people have this sort of connection with one another and they've built trust. And, Patrick Lencioni's done quite a lot of research and writing around this concept of, high-performing teams. The very, very basis of high-performing teams, the kind of bottom of the pyramid, is trust, having trust with one another. Yeah. When you have to build trust virtually, you can do it. It's just much, much harder. I found anyway, my own personal experience, having gone through last year. And so therefore, you have to still do it, right? It's like, well, people have thought, well, maybe we don't need that anymore because now we're all doing our own things at home. Actually, it's even more important. And so we've had to think of really new ways of building trust, team building, staying fresh, keeping connected, staying sane as well through this virtual world. And it's been quite challenging, but all of the dimensions, all of them, all the work that we've had to do as groups of people have all been human work.
Yeah.
It's been very little technical work. It's not that we're lacking the technical skills, the ability to code or to analyze or to do what we need to do technically. It's the human side of things that we've had to reestablish and work on, because fundamentally, to be the best version of yourself, to have a great career, to feel engaged every day like you're adding value, it's the human side of things that needs to be amplified and lit up. And the technical skills complement, of course, but they don't lead.
Yeah, absolutely. We're having a couple of comments coming through. Caroline, who's been working for a business and since last May, fully remotely, and definitely missing that physical interaction. And her husband's getting bugged by her more than ever before, by all accounts. And we've also got an educator from New Zealand talking about remote learning, and that's quite challenging, in particular with special education students.
Oh, 100%, because it's very hard to read cues, David, as well. Very, very hard.
I think that's one of the challenges for the pandemic, in the same way as there's going to be the vaccine challenge between poor countries and rich countries. It's going to create greater disparity. And I think there's going to be the educational challenge. People who find academic work harder, which is nothing wrong with that. It's just the way it is for some folk. And then that's going to be more of a challenge to help those people with their development.
Yeah, look, I couldn't agree with you more. As I said to you, I proudly wear the badge of the mother of a VCE student who not only survived, she actually did a lot better than she thought she would do. But the remote learning challenge was a significant one for her because she didn't know how to learn remotely. It was never something she'd ever done before. So to be thrust into the world of having to complete your VCE and never having done remote learning before, it was a huge learning curve for her and her peers. Now, they've come out of it more resilient. She's now going into first year uni. It's going to be remote. She knows the rules of the game now, but she had to do a lot of adjustment last year and really step into her confidence, her resilience, her recovery from setbacks when the marks didn't come as she expected. All of those things had to be done remotely. It makes it quite challenging.
Yeah, and there's just another comment coming in talking about team meetups and, doing outdoor meetings. I think this is a beach picnic in this situation. I mean, we did a couple of things in the park, and we've started, walking meetings and a walking and a jogging club again. And I think, one of the benefits might be that we all get to spend more time in fresh air.
I think so. And again, this pull towards other people, but we quickly adjust, as the rules change, we adjust. If you watch in Victoria, you have to wear a mask, you don't have to wear a mask. 20 in a park, 50 in a park, 15 in a home. Everything keeps changing, but we adjust because it's the human condition to survive and thrive, actually. And so I think what we've done is we found ways of actually doing that and still staying, connecting with our wellbeing and our needs, and then doing something about it. So the great outdoors, which is very important for well-being, fresh air, exercise, all of those things I think are actually benefiting us, interestingly, versus, sitting in that office environment, 24/7 for some of us who are, well, certainly I know I've been described as a workaholic, but anyway, sitting in offices, I think that balance that's coming into our lives, the possibility around that balance and the positivity towards well-being, it's sort of unexpected, but I think it's been a great year for that sort of learning.
Well, I was commenting to a friend of mine about outdoor dining that it's gone full circle. The non-smokers want to go outside now and the smokers are stuck back inside. Funny how the world's turned. But can we talk a bit about Max Me? Can you tell us a bit about the business, please?
So as I said to you, David, I sort of felt quite compelled to leave the corporate environment, start my own business. I actually come from a family of entrepreneurs. So myself and my sister were really the only people in a very, very large Ukrainian family that actually are in corporate. So I had a lot of people around me that had done the own business thing, and that was really helpful for me because I'd grown up with it. And I'd actually had a cafe with my mum at one stage in my in my life as well. So I'd had a bit of that experience, and I thought, I'm going to do this. And what do I want to do? Well, I actually want to sort of democratize human skill development because so I'm a bit of a people watcher, and not really in a creepy way. So don't worry, everybody. But I like to reflect and to observe the human condition. It's always just been the way I have been. And actually, I don't think I can be a good servant leader unless I'm really acutely aware of what's going on around me. So as I observed people, this ever-growing sort of gap in their human skills presented, as I mentioned to you, the gap for young people. And I thought, what can I do? I can step out and I can actually use all of the things that I've used myself as a coach, guide, and set people up for career success. And also all of the huge investment that was put into me over a very long period of time. I spent almost 10 years at NAB. I was on 3 different talent programs. I had a lot of investment put into me. And so through that investment, there was a lot of learning, a lot of concepts that I then took and applied in the way that I led people, etc. So I thought, how can I bring those concepts to life in a democratized way? Why do we have to only open or expose people to this sort of learning where they're on a talent program, or when they're in the 5% of people that get invested in it in an organisation, and the rest have to sort of rely on strong leadership from their own leaders, or having to know what to go out and learn themselves. So I started Max Me. The name is very purposeful. It's of course about maximising me, maximising the human, maximising the individual. And then we have actually codified, I guess, in a very coaching style, the sorts of human skill development that people need to succeed in their career and have a good life. Because that's what this is about. It's not just about work. This is about the sorts of skills that I need as a human to actualize and to have a good life and to be a good version of myself with others. And so we've codified that, and we've also built an app. The reason why we've built an app is easily accessible. It doesn't rely you having to to go out and work out what program to go and buy if you want to do online learning, etc. And so we built this app to have the codification in it. It's a guided experience. It's in a very coaching, easy to digest style. It's gamified. It's built on the 70-20-10 model, which is a little bit of learning and then a lot of application. And so the business is all around putting human skill development into the hands of as many people as we can, because I truly believe, David, and this is kind of the big purpose statement for me, the lofty goal, is I actually want to change the way we find ourselves feeling at work. We spend the majority of our time every day at work, in some sort of work, and too many of us are feeling stressed, disengaged, and demotivated. And I have a very strong hypothesis that requires a significant uplift in the human skills that we find in the workplaces.
And then through that, you get more, I guess, fulfillment, happiness. I think in the top 5 regrets of the dying, the book, one of it is I spent too much time at work. It's like, we spend, as you say, an awful lot of time at work, maybe a third of our time, approximately. And, you've got to be comfortable and find happiness in it, really.
No, I agree, David. And that's why, as I said, these skills, self-awareness, communication, collaboration, creativity, problem solving, they're life skills. And this is why I really, really believe that those that engage and work on developing themselves in this kind of lifelong learning ethos, which is, it's a buzzword at the moment. Everyone's talking about this sort of, kind of step in and be a lifelong learner and failing fast and open to learning. It's all very true. Sorry, it's not a buzzword for me, and it's kind of the way I've always tried to be. And that's in no way saying I've got the monopoly on good ideas, but it's just kind of always been obvious to me. And this sort of concept of developing those skills so you can be the best version of yourselves regardless of where you turn up and who you're with, whether it's yourself or others.
And the app's called Hody, I believe.
Hody.
Made a very generous offer to all participants to offer Hody to people for a period of time. Maybe you can talk us through that.
Look, definitely, because the purpose here, David, as I said, and I do truly feel like this is kind of my life work. I know that sounds really cliche and people go to me, really? Honestly, I do feel like I am in a stage of my life right now. I'm approaching 50 rapidly, and I feel like I'm compelled to do this. And I feel like this is my life work. All the investment, all the amazing role models at, number one, my mum, and I've had several strong role models in the workforce. I've been so blessed with this, and I feel like I have to share it. I feel like I have to help others. Again, this sort of servant leadership. So I would like to make this offer. Hody, which means today in Latin, it's the codified version of this human skill development. And I just want to share it with as many people as possible to get us going. We're very early in our sort of time as an organisation. We spent all of last year developing what I think is, not only we've had good feedback on, is a sensational product. Now I want to put it into as many hands as possible. And so therefore I feel compelled to make an offer, particularly as you've been so kind to have me on today to talk about this.
No problem at all. And it really resonated. And I know when we were talking about today's session, and it really resonated when you spoke about talent programs and, high flyers, high achievers, they're identified, right? You're in the top 5%. You're going to get this development, and some of that will be the stuff we're talking about. And there's a lot of people who just get left and they don't get to, play their own symphony, as Vin, who is on Series 2, used to talk about. Everyone's got a symphony in them in the same way as I suppose they used to say, everyone's got a book in them, that type of thing, really. But one example that really resonates along those lines, really, is Bill Gates. Reading about him as a child, extremely introverted, apparently just wanted to read in his room. But his mother in particular forced him to go out there and and get involved in the world. And of course, the rest is history, so to say. But there's a lot of people, amazing talent out there that we just need to help them, bring their participation out more.
David, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I mentioned I'm slightly voyeuristic in my people watching, and I used to work at NAB. I'll give it as start there, an organisation of 40,000 people, yep. And I used to stop and think to myself, I am actually a big zealot on reflection, by the way, and reflection is built into the app. It's built into our codified method, because those that reflect and, do the kind of constant stop, start, continue on themselves and on their situations, I have, my encounter is they lead a better life. So as I stop and I reflect, and I used to sit there and think, what would it be if every single NAB person, 40,000 people, turned up as the best version of themselves every day? They were engaged, confident, knew what their strengths were, knew what their values were aligned to what they were doing, and just ready for anything. What would that organisation be like? Would we need to sit in endless meetings thinking about strategies and plans and improvement opportunities and programs of work? Or would every one of those 40,000 people turning up at work being the best version of themselves make sure that everything of all those other things got taken care of? And then I thought, well, only 5% of those 40,000 at best get any kind of development. Now, the reality, as I said to you, some are really lucky. They have great leaders. They've got great role models. They can step into their own human kindness, I guess, and be the best version of them are. But a lot of them aren't. A lot of us, let's face it, are being led by people who themselves don't have well-developed human skills. And so that those 5% benefit, do they then carry it forward, pay it forward, share it with others? My experience is only a very small percentage actually take what they've learned and share it with others. Yep. So you've got this dwindling percentage of the 40,000 who are actually getting that development and sharing that development. What happens to the rest, David? And why should they miss out? Because remember, 40,000 people turning up to be the best version of themselves makes for an incredible company with an incredible balance sheet. So That's what I've stepped in to try and really interrupt and make a difference with.
Fantastic. And that kind of segues into a poll. We've got a couple of polls we'd like to run. So the first one, and I'll just, it's up here on the screen. So what do you consider the most important of these human skills for corporate workers? So we've got creativity, communication, mindfulness, growth mindset, adaptability, self-awareness. So we'll give that a few seconds while people let us know what they think. And I'll just share that Jeff's kindly shared from Melbourne Water that they've noticed a 30% increase in their workforce attending outdoor areas for meetings. And so that's just another, I guess, reinforcing that people are spending more time in nature, and fresh air is good for you, I suppose.
Definitely. Walking meetings, like that became a thing, particularly obviously not when we were in full lockdown, but people, as they were allowed to spend, the 1.5 metre distance with one another, were going for walking meetings, because you don't want to be in the office wearing a mask doing that meeting inside the office. If you could go for a walk together, 1.5 metre distance, mask off and talking to each other, eyeballing each other, feeling that sense of connection and the kind of non-verbals that we need. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking of walking meetings, and we're just getting the results in, but I'll just quickly share. Someone I know through my children's school lost 15 kilos during COVID by doing all phone calls, and he's got about 4 to 5 hours a day typically on the phone. He said, right, every phone call I'm going to walk. So he was basically walking 4 to 5 hours a day, and, amazing health benefits as well. So the polls are in, and self-awareness is the most popular choice, 46%. Adaptability just at 5%. That's quite interesting as well, because people spoke about nimble, agile, which, growth mindset, 13%.
Yeah, look, I'm not surprised. We actually ran a similar poll on LinkedIn about a year ago, David, and it was very much very, very similar results. And I'm delighted, because actually I'm a very strong believer that if you have high levels of self-awareness, if you spend the time working on yourself, being the best version of yourself, then actually the rest takes care of itself sometimes. Now, you still have to work on things like communication, which was a close second. Again, delighted, because, humans need to communicate, definitely. And interestingly, I'm not sure if everyone on this call knows that a study was done in 1970 by a professor in America, and he found that only 7% of any communication is what a person says. 93% is around the paraverbal, which is how you use your voice, pausing, those sorts of things, and then the non-verbal, which is your body language. And 93% of any communication is not what you say. It's how you say it, your posture, your facial expressions, etc. So that's really, really interesting. And communication as a skill and as a capability is a lot more than just what you say.
Absolutely. I want to explore that a bit more, but I'm also interested in that creativity had 0%. So I thought that was quite interesting. Can you talk through that a bit?
Interestingly, even in the app, I sort of, the introduction to creativity is, this is not the thing that hippies do, right? So the reality is, when we hear creativity, and a lot of the population actually have a bias to being analytical. Like, it's actually, there's a concept called head, heart, and guts. We actually have 3 hearts. We have a head brain, a heart brain, and a gut brain. And a lot of us kind of, we revert to the head brain and sort of for that kind of making sense of things. And so creativity sounds like the thing that kind of is grey people, loose people do. Actually not. Creativity is the willingness to be curious and open to other ways of doing things and thinking. When you have a creative mindset, you think that there is possibility in more than just who you are and what you think. Yeah. And in this complex world, and there's a term called VUCA, which some may or may not know about, but it's the description. There's 4 words: volatile, uncertain, complex. Oh my God, I've had a blank on the A, but it's all around the complexity around us, and life is becoming more complex. Work is becoming more complex. In that complexity, cause and effect is very difficult to pinpoint. And so you need a creative mindset, a mindset of possibility, a growth mindset, an open mindset to what could be, to then make the most of that complexity and survive through it and thrive through it, obviously. So creativity is not about drawing, although drawing helps, and scribbling. And, there was a whole movement around, the books that they were publishing around just drawing with colours and those sorts of things, because, again, it sparks the mindset around possibility, open-mindedness, which is so important in complexity.
So I'd argue that therefore creativity comes into the foundation of human skills. And actually Ray Dalio, whose book Principles is excellent, talks about radical open-mindedness and, really being part of exactly what you're saying around creativity. So that's quite interesting.
I might just step in just very, very quickly, Dave, sorry to say, because I know this series is around change, and I've done quite a lot of studies and application of change. I'm a change agent. I've led big transformation programs. And the one thing that I know to be true about change is that people don't fear change, they fear loss.
Yeah.
And what the opposite of that kind of fear of loss is creativity. So how do you open your mind to possibility even in change? How do you see that there's something for you in a changed situation or a changed world? If you're fearful and you are fearing loss and therefore closing your creativity or your open-mindedness, your curiosity, then it's a very difficult place to be. And so I think there's that strong link as well around this sort of complexity and the openness to change.
And actually last year, the Harvard Business Review published, I think it's their most read article ever, just when the pandemic was going through in the April time, roughly last year. And it was talking about the feeling we all had was post-traumatic grief. And then from grief comes gratitude. We're grateful for what we've still got, and strength, human resilience, as a couple of people have commented. But if we could just go to, talking about the human skills again, and, your line, which I use myself, is it's not what you say, it's how you say it. But what about listening? I sometimes say at work, 2 ears.
Yeah. You took it out of my mouth, David. Yes.
So and people say to you, I hear what you're saying. It doesn't mean you're listening to what people are saying. So how important is listening in human skills?
So one of the most self-actualized communicators, the thing that they over-index on is listening.
Yeah.
And it's not just listening, because there's different types of listening. There's listening to respond and listening to understand, and they are actually quite different. So someone might say to you, oh, no, I've heard you, I've listened, but they haven't actually heard you at all, because the whole time you're speaking, they're just thinking about what they're going to respond with. And so they're doing what I call, or what others call, listening to respond. Listening to understand is a deep connective listening. When you're listening to understand and you're truly trying to work out what's the person saying, you're reading their body language, you're working out how they feel, where are they at, what's their mindset, all of those things. When you're truly listening to all things with all senses and listening to understand, that is the most powerful mechanism and tool that you have in terms of getting the most out of situations, getting shit done, as I call it, and that sort of growing trust, growing relationships. It's a foundational skill. And there is absolutely a reason why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, David, 100%, because double the listening, half the talking, and you're going to actually have a lot of great outcomes come your way.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because when we're in the conversation and, none of us are perfect, and I'm certainly far from perfect. I bumped into someone I hadn't seen in the street the other day and just making small talk. And then I went away from that and to my next thing. And I thought, I forgot to ask how so-and-so was. So I shot them an email because I was like, so I guess the message for us all is, do you think that type of, it's good to be reflective and use it as a follow-up and build on your human skills that way? Because none of us get it right all the time, right?
No, definitely. And making daily habits of reflection is super critical, David. Again, that's why I've built it into the app, because people over time, reflection has eroded. We're so busy doing that a lot of us don't stop and actually pause and go, well, what just happened to me? What did I learn? What am I going to do differently? Who do I need to follow up with because I might have forgotten something? Because it is, when we're in, Brene Brown talks about this concept of being in the arena. When you're in the play and in the arena, often it's difficult to kind of step away on the balcony and go, okay, what's really happening here? So reflection allows us to do that. And obviously it's important to reflect shortly after the event, because you can easily forget in the busy that happens. But definitely this sort of concept of thinking about stepping in and doing something about it is super, super critical. Yeah. But if you're not listening and picking up on cues, as I said to you, with all of your senses, with your eyes, with your ears, with your smell, all of our senses can be engaged when we're truly listening, and then truly listening to understand. What that leaves you with is a whole lot of information that some will be very obvious to you and the rest will become more obvious as you reflect and apply that throughout the day. Definitely very important.
I also think human skills can fluctuate. Like, I find myself some days I'm more in tune with it than others. What do you think about that, Renata? Do you experience
Well, again,
that?
I think that's where reflection comes in, David. We are works in progress, as I said, and not every day you're going to show up as the best version of yourself. And that in itself is an innate human skill, to be able to go, what just happened there? How did I show up? What did I learn from it? What do I want to do differently? If you don't stop and reflect, you just keep repeating the same thing over and over again. And you almost don't sort of have that ability to sort of say, well, actually, I want to stop doing that. If you don't think that you're doing it, or you don't know that you're doing it, how can you possibly do something about it? So it's impossible. We're not perfect. I know society, and particularly social media, drives this ridiculous, unattainable perfectionism, particularly in our youth. It's heartbreaking. But that's not life. It's not possible. It's not feasible. And so we have to accept as humans that we are not perfect, nor do we want to be perfect, because how boring would it be if we're already fully formed? Life is about learning and about developing and about becoming a better and better version of yourself. How amazing is that?
Yeah. And I say to people at work, if you can make your bad days, which we all have bad days where we're just not up for it, average, and then your good days will be exceptional, because none of us, it's like sports, music, whatever it might be, none of us are going to be, a Roger Federer every day of the week. And even someone as great as that, they have their average day still obviously amazing.
Of course.
You know what I mean? You've just got to sort of manage I suppose you're managing the risk in it a bit, really.
Look, and I think the reality is, and thank you for raising it, because every single person has got strengths. And I'm sure it would surprise you to know that only 1% of the population at any given time is aware of their strengths and actually applying them. So about 10% know what their strengths are, but only 1% of the population are actually applying them every day and sort of getting the flow that comes from working in your area of strengths. I will also say, sorry, I don't want to kind of sort of bombard with information, but Gallup did quite a bit of research in this area and found that people who apply their strengths for at least 7 hours a day, actually only 30% of those people feel a sense of stress, of sort of heightened stress and sort of depletion of well-being. So there is a direct correlation between knowing your strengths, applying your strengths, and then your well-being. And that is why the very first step of anyone who I coach, who I've worked with, we're always seeking to understand their strengths first, and then we work from those areas of strength and help them to work around their weaknesses, which of course they have, but it's no good to spend all your time thinking about your weaknesses. Know your strengths and spend time amplifying those, and you will live a better life and have far better career success.
We've got a lot of leaders joining us today. So if you're working in businesses, can you offer some counsel to business leaders about how they can diagnose and uplift the skills of their people?
First thing I'll say, David, and this is with all due respect because I used to be one of those leaders and I still am a leader, I lead people, I lead a family, is the first thing to think about is your own human skills. Because the leadership shadow that we cast is daily, it's by the minute, we're being watched all the time. Our people are watching us for signals of cultural norms, behavioural norms, and how they need to turn up and perform to be, to get value out of themselves and for the organisation. The first place they look for is in their leader. And so I think it's really important and interesting that the poll that we just had, if as a leader your human skills are not above average, I guess the question is, what is your role to get to above average? Because the role of a leader, and it is a privilege, it's not a thing that you just anointed with. Leadership is a privilege. So to lead others, what is our role as leaders to get ourselves to the best version of ourselves that we can be and become above average in the human skills? Because that's the skills like empathy, like connection, all of those things, communication, storytelling, they're the things that our people need from us. So our role, I think, for me anyway, is to work on becoming above average in your human skills. And then from that position, open your eyes up to where your people need you most. Offer them coaching, guidance, counsel. I have been led by micromanagers probably twice in my career, maybe 3 times, serious micromanagers. And the depletion that I felt in that time, it was gut-wrenching. It was soul-destroying. I had to leave the organisation. There was no sort of way it could be done. We don't need to do the work for our people. We need to support them. We need to sort of present them with what they can possibly be and let them step in and do it. So what is our role as leaders? I think that's the first step. That's where you start.
Yeah, fantastic. Just a couple more questions coming through because we're nearly out of time. So Lee wonders, have you got any tricks you can share to improve being present in a conversation or to improve understanding rather than preparing for a response? And I guess my initial reaction to that would be if there's points in the conversation where you can pick up on things that are said and add a comment in, I suppose it shows that sort of engagement in a conversation.
Totally, David. So I think first and foremost, leave the phone out of the room. Do not take your phone to conversations. I can't tell you how upsetting it is when someone is half listening because they're busy looking at their phone, reading their emails. I've had one-on-ones where my leader has been reading emails as they've been listening to what I'm saying to them.
Yep.
Sorry, but that's a disgrace. Second of all, what you described is called mirroring. Humans need to belong, again, as we said, and when they feel like they belong, they feel like they're being heard, listened to. Being able to deeply engage with what someone is saying and then play it back to them and you know, that can be a bit clumsy at first, but then you get better at it as you practice it, is to pick up on cues, pick up on, again, their non-verbal cues. Where is their voice elevating or going higher pitch, which means they're really excited or passionate or nervous about something? Yeah. Really pick up on those cues, and reading those cues, then formulate a response, which is, you know, checking in for understanding, replaying what you've heard, supporting their argument, maybe giving them another point of view in a really sort of helpful way. All of those things help the human feel like they've been heard. When we've been heard and understood, we feel more engaged, we feel more relaxed. I trust you more because I know that you're listening to me and you care what I'm saying and you care about me.
Yeah, definitely. I always find it a bit odd when people answer the phone and say, I can't talk to you, I'm in a meeting. And I think, well, probably just don't answer the phone going forward. But anyway.
Definitely. It's terrible. It's heart-wrenching. Yeah.
But each their own, of course. Final question, pretty appropriate as well. So how can listening to understand work in this new, you know, quasi-virtual world?
Well, it's harder because, again, as I said, we don't have the physical body to read. Remember, communication, 7% of what is being said. The rest is voice, pausing, eye contact, body language. It's very, very difficult to read that virtually. And so it's even harder work. You know, I find myself at the end of the day with back-to-back Zoom meetings, I feel exhausted because I'm constantly spending time trying to read the play. Because I'm in a people business, you know, I'm constantly meeting with people and trying to assess where they're coming from, what they're trying to get done. And, you know, I work in transformation, which is all around the world of change, and that's fast moving. You've got to be switched in and tuned in. And it's actually really, really hard. I'm not sure that I've got any, you know, kind of easy solutions here, but it's an attentiveness. It's learning to read things differently. And it's a practice thing. You get better at it as you try new things. That's reality.
And we're missing out on a lot of anecdotal conversations, although, you know, our business, like many others, are trying to get back a couple of days a week. And, you know, but you do miss out on those anecdotal coffee corridor type conversations.
Definitely. Water cooler chats, right? So, yeah,
water cooler chats.
Definitely.
So we're out of time. Just a quick reminder, I suggest, you've got really great content you share on LinkedIn, Renata. So I'd encourage everyone to connect with you on LinkedIn, and, of course, check out MaxMe. That's it for today. We will see you in a few weeks. Renata, thank you for your time this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, Renata.
Thank you. Thanks so much.